Hello from ABA Tech Show 2019 in Chicago, Illinois. I'm Laurence Colletti.
I'm Brett Burney.
I'm Dan Siegel.
I'm Ben Schorr.
I'm Dave Ries.
I'm Dennis Kennedy.
I'm Ashley Alfirevic.
And we are all on the road with Legal Talk Network. And we're back. It's a pleasure to have you guys back again, listeners. I've got a monstrous panel. I cannot believe we stuffed this many people around a small table. Welcome to the show, everybody.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks.
So I've got a lot of authors, and I have Ashley here to explain to us ABA publishing and how all that works. And so what I want to do before we get started, because everybody here is a professional in addition to being an author, introduce everybody. If you could tell us where you work, what do you do? I'm going to start with Brett Burney, who brought his book by Max in Law.
Yes.
So let's start with you.
We'll get to that. So I'm Brett Burney. I mostly do a lot of electronic discovery consulting on an independent basis. Also have a website called appsinlaw.com where I do short video reviews of apps, mostly for iOS devices and Macs.
All right, and Dan Siegel.
I'm Dan Siegel, and I have two businesses. I operate a law firm in Havertown outside of Philadelphia where we focus on appellate and writing and ethics. And I also am a workflow consultant at Integrated Technology Services.
All right, Ben Schorr.
I'm a senior content developer at Microsoft, and I create and manage support content and help content that's at our support.office.com site.
And David Ries. Is it Ries? Ries. All right. And David Ries. Sorry.
I'm an attorney with Clark Hill in Pittsburgh. It's a large law firm, and I practice in the areas of cybersecurity and privacy.
Oh, my goodness. It's Dennis Kennedy.
Hey, Laurence, the hardest working man in legal showbiz. So I'm Dennis Kennedy. I'm retired from in-house counsel from MasterCard. I'm currently an adjunct professor at Michigan State's legal R&D program. I do a lot of writing and speaking and podcasting on the Legal Talk Network, and I have some new things I'll be doing that you'll be hearing about soon.
And we have Ashley. She's keeping this podcast from being a mantle. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, I'm Ashley. I work with ABA Publishing, and I'm currently working with the Law Practice Division. I do book marketing, and I also help host the Modern Law Library podcast from the ABA Journal.
You should check out that show. Ashley does a fantastic job. So very entertaining. And was that your first podcast that you started to host?
Yes, it was. So I believe the first one was with Stuart Levine with Fessler. That might not have been the first one. There have been so many, and they've all been wonderful.
Well, you do a great job. She's a natural. So, well, we've got a lot of books to talk about. Every one of the authors around the table has just recently written a book, and we're going to talk about those. And so because it's ABA Tech Show, these books are technology related. And so lawyers out there, if you're looking to run your firm more efficient, build a better mousetrap, you should definitely tune in. You've got your expert panel here, and we'll get you their contact information at the end. So I'm going to look at Brett. I was going to ask for a volunteer, but I already know Brett's volunteered. So Brett, let's start with your book. What's it called?
So my book is Max in Law, and the subtitle here, we try to get a little more specific. It's a definitive guide for the Mac curious Windows using attorney. We found in working with this, there's about 10 to 12% of lawyers, at least in the United States, that are using Macs as their primary computing platform. But typically my co-author Tom Lamott and I, we continue to get this question all the time. Hey, I'm using Windows. Is it possible for me to run my practice on a Mac? So that's really the audience that we targeted this book for. And we go through and do everything from giving you some of the ways to set it up. We run through one of my favorite sections is we talk about a lot of the Mac myths or the myths of running your practice on a Mac. Like Macs are too expensive is a question we always get. How can I afford it? Or I won't be able to share my files with Windows users. We cover all that in here and just telling you that it is absolutely possible. There will be some changes that you'll have to go through, but that's what the book is written for.
All right, and Daniel Siegel.
Our book is The Ultimate Guide to Adobe Acrobat DC, which is the software that most law firms use in creating PDFs, which they use for electronic filing, discovery, and other items. And the book, co-authored by my paralegal, Pam Myers, is a complete guide to all of the features lawyers use with hundreds of screenshots to actually show you how to accomplish what you need to do in the software.
Excellent. Ben Schorr.
So my book is the second edition of my previous book, which is the Lawyer's Guide to Microsoft Office 365. And it's intended as an introduction to Office 365, which is a huge suite of products and services. And we wanted to make sure that attorneys who are considering Office 365, who recently got it, have a pretty good idea of what's in it and what they should be thinking about when they're deciding if and when to go to Office 365.
If I'm an attorney and I'm reading your book, am I going to save a lot of time?
I hope so. and I hope they're going to be a little more knowledgeable when they talk to, because in most cases, especially if you have a decent-sized firm, you're probably talking to a third party, a technology partner or an IT consultant. And sometimes those guys are going to speak a language you might not speak. And so I'm hoping that the book gives the attorney the tools to be able to have an intelligent conversation and understand what the IT consultant's talking about and can make better decisions.
All right, and David Ries.
My book is Locked Down, Practical Information Security for Lawyers. I wrote it with Sharon Nelson and John Simic, and as its name suggests, we try to be practical in today's world where cyberspace is such a dangerous place and there's all kinds of cyber criminals and hackers and nation states going after everyone's data, including lawyers. We give attorneys and law firms everything from an overview of what cybersecurity is and how to start with it to very practical tips for day-to-day steps to protect your information.
So I have a question for you. Obviously, Sharon Nelson and John Simic, they do a podcast on our platform, Legal Talk Network. But I wanted to ask you, what's it like to work with he who must not be named on the internet, John Simic?
It's been great working with both John and Sharon. I've been doing it for a number of years. We've been doing CLE programs together since the early 2000s, and this was the third book that I wrote with them. So, we've really become a team working together on both CLEs and articles and books.
Does he really like the Seattle Seahawks?
I think he does.
All right, fair enough.
Just a little.
Fair enough. All
I can
right.
vouch for that.
All right, Dennis Kennedy.
So I've co-written a book, a new edition of a book with Tom Mile, and it's called The Lawyer's Guide to Collaboration Tools and Technologies, Smart Ways to Work Together. And we looked at the whole notion to say that lawyers always work within a context. You're always working with different people, either on the same side, the other side, in a variety of ways. And we looked at the ways to think about that and to find the right tools for the communication you need. Look at the security, look at the sharing, and look at how you make decisions. So very practical. A lot of what we wrote is about how to make decisions about technology and how to involve your collaborators in that process.
So if I use your book, what kind of products and services am I going to be looking at? Do you have kind of a chapters for them, or like different elements listed out, or what kind of information am I getting?
We try to run the range for the types of collaboration that you do. So a lot of people are using track changes for collaboration in certain circumstances. As Ben would say, you could find Microsoft SharePoint. You're going to see Slack was the new thing that we added, which is a way that people can communicate to each other. So we look at the whole range from free to suites, but I think the really important part of the book is the decision-making process. So we give you some checklists and other ways to think about these tools, and actually a client survey to give to your clients to find the ways that you can actually work better together.
And your co-author, Tom Mile, I hear he has a lot of free time on his hands.
You know, if you talk to him, he is like the second busiest man in legal showbiz. But Tom does a lot of stuff, and he is great. Pleasure to work with. Pleasure to do the podcast, and so incredibly knowledgeable.
But he's an actor too. I don't know if anybody knows that, but we've caught a couple of pictures and stuff he showed us when we were down in Texas. Pretty awesome. He does that. Makes time for that.
Yeah, it really is. He's a great person to work with. We've collaborated on books and articles and the podcast for probably close to probably around 15 years now at this point. And it's great to find somebody that's so easy to write together with. And I would say on these tech books, one of the things you might have noticed is that for people who are thinking about writing a tech book, it may seem overwhelming to you, but the idea of working with somebody can actually make a book happen.
Well, that's a great segue. So Ashley joins us from ABA Publishing, and so Ashley, this is obviously quite an endeavor to pilot all of the production of these books. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so ABA Publishing publishes books by lawyers for lawyers, really focusing on practical tips and ways people can improve their practice. One focus of the Law Practice Division is technology and making sure lawyers are up to date and keeping their practice, current with the newest tech. So if you're interested in writing a book for ABA Publishing, you can go to americanbar.org on the Law Practice page, and there is a section for publications. I'm going to read you the URL right now in case you really want to write a book and you want to go fill out the form ASAP. So you're going to go to americanbar.org/groups/law_practice/publications. And you can go there and fill out a form to be considered to be an author. And then when you work with us, you also get a great marketing team, and we'll make sure that you're promoted through all sorts of different channels and getting the word about your book out there.
This might be different for everybody, but how long does it take to write a book? Just kind of the process from end to end.
Well, it's definitely different and dependent on how long the book is, what the subject matter is. For some people, it can take anywhere from 18 to 30 months. It really depends on how many drafts you go through, if there's multiple authors, things like that. So, but definitely takes a lot of work, but is well worth it, and a great contribution to the profession.
I mean, I've got a great book in me. I think droids have feelings too. I'm thinking.
I like it.
But if you guys are out there, I'm sure you got some topics that you probably get a little feedback from some of the members of the American Bar Association, and they want to learn a little bit more. Mm-hmm. Is there a list of possible topics that you're searching for? So if there's a hungry author out there that has some expertise unique, they can reach out and find this, say, oh yeah, I do have an idea for that.
Yeah, that's a good point. We do certainly have topics that we cover frequently, but I think if there's something that we don't talk about and you see a hole and you're like, that is a spot where you need a book, that's actually what we want. If you see something we don't have, that's a great place to jump in and say, I'm the author for that and I want to write a book on it. So.
All right, I have two questions for everybody. We got a pretty big podcast here. So my first question of the two is I want to go around the table and ask each of y'all what your favorite moment was or your favorite part about doing the ABA publishing process was. And since we started with Brett Burney, we're going to begin back with Brett Burney.
Okay. Well, you know what? I will go right back to what Dennis said. I was actually working on the book solo for probably a couple of years or so, and it wasn't until I teamed up with Tom, my co-author here, that it just putting the two minds together. We did whiteboards and we started working on it. That was the most exciting thing for me because then I could see the idea start to gel a little bit better. Just like Dennis said, it's great to be able to work with somebody. It's not as overwhelming then at that point and getting it through. And he brought up new ideas, fresh ideas that we could work together on there. So that was the thing that was most exciting for me. And then I actually got to sign a book today. That was, I guess, the most post-exciting thing.
Thank you for signing that, by the way.
I know. Yeah. It's like the first one I've ever had. And then in one book, I even forgot to actually sign my name. I was writing something cute. But, I'm happy that somebody asked me to do that.
So I know Dennis Kennedy gets a lot of he gives a lot of autographs. So just to help Brett out, what kind of pen should he always be packing with him to sign autographs?
You definitely want the black Sharpie. You can go with the fine, but I think the standard Sharpie. You also want to pay attention to your book and the front page to see how much room you have, because it looks bad. Like you say, you're writing something cute and you run out of space.
Right.
It's not a good.
See, these
not
are
a good
veteran
thing.
tips. I have no idea. It does not look good to sign it with a ballpoint big pen. I'm just saying. So you're right. The Sharpie would have been much better.
All right. How about favorite moment from you, Daniel?
I think it is when after the book's published and you actually get response. Because otherwise it's a giant vacuum out there. And the feeling when people come up to you and say, we like your book, or your book was great, or those tips made a difference, that's when it really makes a difference. Because otherwise, when you write a book, you feel like you're in isolation, whether you're writing with someone or not, and it's feedback. And, yesterday watching people go right to the bookstore was the best thing I could see.
All right, how about you, Ben?
I guess I'm going to go with the patience of the LPM publishing staff. And I'm writing a book about a product that changes every month, and so we had to go through so many different revisions of the manuscript that it almost felt like it was never going to be done because my company kept changing the product underneath us. But they were great and really patient with the incessant changes. So
How about you, David?
Well, there were really two moments for me on each of the three books. And the first one was when John and Sharon and I finished all the changes on the last set of proofs and sent it in to ABA Publishing. So, we were done with that part of getting the book done. And the second was when the books arrived. You see it with the cover in print. You open it and thumb through it, and you see the product of what you've done.
Dennis?
It really is what Dave just said, that when the box comes and you realize it's your books, your copies of your book, and you open it up and you grab your smartphone, take a picture, post to LinkedIn, tweet it, that's when it feels real. That's the great moment.
I'm switching the question a little bit for Ashley. So you've heard all that.
Yeah.
They just gave you feedback. So if you look around the table, who's your favorite author here?
Well, I just started, so I really can't say. I'm too new. So everyone's my favorite author.
Oh, so diplomatic. So diplomatic. All right, well, last question for everybody. If our listeners, they want to learn more about your book, reach out and learn a little bit more about this process, how can they find you? I'm going to go backwards this time. We're going to go to Ashley.
All right. Well, first of all, you can buy all of these books on shopaba.org. We have all our books available for purchase from the Law Practice Division and otherwise. And right now, if you go on our main website, we actually have a list of all the books available at TechShow that you can buy online. So, shopaba.org for all these wonderful books and others.
And Dennis?
Well, you can always find me at my website, DennisKennedy.com, or my blog, DennisKennedy.blog, if you sense a theme there. But I always like to send people, and I'm really heavily present on Twitter, at Dennis Kennedy, same theme, and on LinkedIn as well. But I like to send people to the Kennedy Mile Report podcast because I think that's where Tom and I are doing some really interesting things and talking about some great topics, and we love hearing from that audience.
It's a great show, and there's a little call-in number at the end. If you want a question, you want to ask Dennis and Tom, you can. They'll play you on the air. You get a little shout-out, so I think that's a great thing.
Yeah, we like it, and I also like the fact that Tom is the one who has to read off that number, so I don't have to remember it.
All right, how about you, David?
The easiest way for me is just email. It's DRIES@ClarkHill, ClarkHill.com.
And Ben?
You can find me on Twitter at bschorr. And also there's a Facebook group, Office for Lawyers, that I participate in quite a bit. And there's a lot of good discussion that goes there and tips that get posted.
Excellent. Dan?
Best way is to email me either at Dan J. Siegel, DANIEL, JSIEGEL.com, or Dan at techlawyergy, TECHLAWYERGY.com.
Last but not least, Brett Burney.
Well, being a little bit on the nerdy side, we actually set up a separate website, maxinlawbook.com, that actually goes right to the ABA publishing site if you wanted to buy the book. And then I also have the blog, appsinlaw.com, where you can find some little short videos of reviews of apps that lawyers use in their practice.
Well, we reached the end of the road for today's episode, but I want to thank our guests, Brett, Dan, Ben, David, Dennis, and Ashley for joining us today.
Thanks. And I do want to mention you can also follow ABA Publishing on Twitter at ShopABA. We're also on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram at ABA Publishing.
Ashley is so good at her job. Look at that plug.
Thank you. We have some new ones. Our social media is growing. I run the Instagram, so it's kind of my favorite, but
There you go. Well, I also want to thank our listeners for tuning in. If you like what you heard today, please subscribe, rate, and review us in Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or best yet, your favorite podcasting app. We'll see you next time for another episode of On the Road with Legal Talk Network.
If you'd like more information about what you've heard today, please visit LegalTalkNetwork.com. Subscribe via iTunes and RSS. Find us on Twitter and Facebook, or download our free Legal Talk Network app in Google Play and iTunes. The views expressed by the participants of this program are their own and do not represent the views of, nor are they endorsed by, Legal Talk Network, its officers, directors, employees, agents, representatives, shareholders, and subsidiaries. None of the content should be considered legal advice. As always, consult a lawyer.